Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I think you know by now I'm Scott Soshnick, the editor-in-chief at Sportico, and all our folks do appreciate you joining us. This is our last panel of the South by Southwest Sports Track, and I am proud to introduce to my right Jessica Berman. Now, I wish one business card was good enough, but no. Currently, Deputy Commissioner of the National Lacrosse League,
correct.
Incoming Commissioner of the National Women's Soccer League. Enough to do these days?
Yeah, plus my home life, but yes.
We're going to get to the home life because you and I share the way we utilize our kids as focus groups.
Yes,
We've talked about this, but I think it's important because it's telling.
It is.
We do glean a lot from
I have
what
a
they do.
focus group that's double the size of yours.
Yes.
Which makes my data more valuable.
Much more reliable. You definitely want a bigger focus group. I have one, she has two, but we'll talk about why. Haley Rosen, founder of Just Women's Sports, and that's not like years ago, maybe it was the pejorative, just women's sports. No, it's so big now, it's like just women because that's enough, like we have enough to do. There's enough to see and do. Good. I want to get your take on one thing. I woke up this morning knowing I'm doing a panel with a female commissioner, a female founder of women's sports. And I opened up my email, and sorry, competitor, but there's the gist. You must love that. I know, whatever, it's competitor. But I was inundated with women's sports the moment I woke up, knowing this was the rest of my day. You must love where we are.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of momentum and progress happening in the space. A lot of really good stuff.
That's it?
I mean, I think like if we're talking about the gist is sports for women, which is actually very different than what we do. We are literally just women's sports, so we're women's sports for all. It's not women in sports, it's not sports by women for women. This is literally, the name says it all. It is just women's sports. And we actually think that positioning is really important because we think women's sports is bigger than any one gender. We think women's sports is, frankly, we're very bullish on women's sports. We think in the future, women's sports will be bigger than men's sports. And so we're really excited to be here, be talking to the NWSL Commissioner. We're also very bullish on the NWSL as the future leading league in our bet is all of sports. So we're very bullish on the space altogether.
So the way this came about for you is if I'm correct, they reached out to see if you had any recommendations. Who might make a good commissioner for the NWSL? Now, do they do it in a face-saving sort of way? They really wanted you? Or they didn't want to be rejected, and they were like, well, wait, what about you? Would you be interested in this position? Because that's how they approached you. It's sort of that lukewarm, just toe in the water. But here you are.
It is, and it was actually them when I wasn't putting two and two together, and we were talking about my background, where they said, and a lot of people have given us your name, so do you want to throw your name in the ring? Yeah. They approached me, I think, for a few reasons, but as I've learned, certainly, and has been reinforced in the last week, my background being in labor relations and working with player associations, and my approach to labor relations, which is really about building partnership and leveraging the players' trust and credibility to grow the league, is seemingly one of the big areas of focus that I believe will unlock the potential of this league. And most people don't think of management side labor lawyers as the type of background you'd be looking for when you want to work with players and with unions. But I was raised by lawyers in a law firm that really approached labor relations in a very different way.
Hey, doesn't Rob Manfred has a kumbaya relationship with his players, right? That's
not going to comment on Major League Baseball. But I will say, and my announcement was on Wednesday when all of that was coming to a head. So I did get a whole bunch of questions about that, which I had to say respectfully, not going to comment on Major League Baseball. But it's not to say it's easy, and I like to, as I often say, over-deliver and under-promise. So it's not to say that we're not going to have challenges. And anyone who I've worked with in player relations knows that sometimes you might disagree, but at the end of the day, as long as it's approached with professionalism and respect, you can come out of it stronger together. And we need to work together. And we both have the same interest, which is to grow this league and to have it reach its potential.
All right, so give me the top 2 reasons. If somebody said to you just bluntly, why are you doing this? Why'd you take the gig? Because when I saw that Nick Sakevich was leaving the NLL, my knee jerk was, okay, well, Jessica's going to be the new commissioner of the NLL. Clearly, you see this as a better opportunity. What do you see, and why are you doing this?
Well, 15 days ago, or maybe a little more now that a week has passed, I would have said the same thing, that I was wanting to be the next commissioner of the NLL. So I think they too have a bright future, and I was super excited about that before.
You have to love that, right? They too have a bright future.
They
that
have
will
a bright
be blazed
future.
without me.
For me, I would say the primary reason, well, two things. First, I've spent my entire career working with men, being the only woman in the room, always. I was just saying to Haley as we were walking in here that for the first time in my life, I'm surrounded by women. I've never experienced that. I've never worked for an organization or with an organization where there's, honestly, it's not just women, it's diverse voices who are at the table. When I got on my first Zoom call with the league office staff and saw that there were men, women, people of color, I mean, it was just a mosaic of beauty when I think about diversity, and that's really my background. The second reason, which is just as important, goes back to why I work in sports, which is, as many people have heard me talk about this week, I believe sports is a platform for change, and Nelson Mandela's quote lives right above my desk, and it's the reason I work in sports. And I believe the time is now for women's sports where purpose and profit are intersecting at the epicenter of women's sports. It is the culturally relevant narrative way beyond sports, and it's ours to seize. And that is, for me, like the perfect collision of everything that I've been working for in my life, which is to work for a sport that is really leaning into this intersection of purpose and profit, which is what I've spent a lot of my career working on. I heard Julie Ehrman's comments.
You're blowing up my arc of my interview here.
Oh, sorry.
You went right into
Sorry. Well, I love what they're
anybody who's
doing.
been here, that was the Angel City. It's
I love
purpose and profit.
I love it.
I think this is going to be a love-hate relationship, which I'm going to get back to in a minute. Between you and Angel City, it's going to be really good. And by the way, we're changing things up here. For those of you who have been to other panels, it's been wait till the end and come up for questions. Don't wait till the end. Scream them out, come up to the microphone, whatever you want. If you have a question, we want to make this very interactive. Just come on and ask it if something is set up here that sparks your interest.
If Scott's not doing a good job of moderating,
Yeah, if I suck
just
at
make
this,
your
just
way
come on up
to
to
the
microphone and bail me out. That would be great. That's a nice way to say it. But tell Haley what you said to me previously about being invited to the party.
Oh,
Because I want your take on this.
Yeah.
I think it'll resonate, both as a former athlete. By the way, Haley played soccer at Stanford, professional soccer player in the NWSL and elsewhere, if you don't know her background. But tell her what you said about, because I don't know if men get it. Because for men, I would think, and I have 3 sisters, so I get it. I was always raised, make sure you take care of your sisters and watch how people treat your sisters and do it the right, do it, be good. So I think about these things, like get in the elevator and push the button first. I don't know if men think about those things. They're women are uncomfortable, in an elevator in a hotel because you're following us on the floor. Anyway, tell her what you said about being invited to the party, because I think men think being at the party is enough.
yeah. Well, you asked me when I was on your podcast last week about diversity and inclusion, and I always describe it as diversity is getting the invitation to the party, and inclusion is having fun at the party. And they are two very different things. And I think, as I said when we spoke last week, that we're doing pretty well. There's been a lot of progress on the diversity side. There's representation, the see it to be it. You can look up, and there's lots of senior women leaders in the industry right now, both in men's and women's sports. So the face of our industry is changing, but are people having fun at the party? Do they get the opportunity to contribute and feel like their voice can be heard, particularly when you're in a room where you're underrepresented or representing a under-indexed group as it relates to whoever is sitting around the table and making decisions in that moment? Those are the sort of qualitative metrics that are harder to measure, and I believe will be the moment when we all can know that we're in a better place as it relates to diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I candidly have had a very different experience. We were just talking about this. I played soccer. I played in college and I played professionally. I was in predominantly female environments. I experienced sexism for the first time when I was working in tech after I retired, and that was super, super jarring. I was smacked in the face with it. I could not believe it. And I got out of that space pretty quickly because I didn't want to play that game. It wasn't set up for me to succeed. I wasn't going to win. I didn't want to touch it. And so part of building Just Women's Sports was, I mean, I love women's sports, like truly. I love women's soccer. I played it my heart and souls in this space. So like a labor of love. I thought there was a huge business opportunity, but also talking about purpose. I didn't want to play in these male-dominated spaces where, yeah, maybe I get invited, but was I going to have fun at the party, you know? And at Just Women's Sports, we want everyone to have fun at the party. And I think what's exciting about women's sports more holistically is, yes, there's a lot of women. I think that makes sense. But there's a lot of men, a lot of people of color. There's a lot of diversity. And I actually think that's one of the reasons I'm so bullish on the potential of women's sports. There's so much diversity of opinion and background that I think makes the space a lot richer. So I totally agree with that. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about it all. There's also something, just to add, kind of going back to something you said, how you want to align with the players. I think that's also a really cool opportunity in women's sports and something that's a little bit unique in sports. That's how we've built Just Women's Sports as well. Our test is, do the athletes respect us? They're not always going to like us because we're going to be critical. We're going to say, maybe you didn't perform, or maybe this person shouldn't have made the roster. Like we're going to treat these women like athletes and be critical and give harsh takes. But do they respect what we're doing? Because I think that in women's sports, there's been a lot of overthinking around how to cover this, you know? A lot of people thinking, how do we cover this for young girls? How do we make sports feminine? Oh, it's got to be lifestyle content. And I think that we've over-engineered the whole thing. Treat women's sports like sports. And I think the biggest test of that is, do the athletes like and respect what you're doing? And so I'm fully aligned with the way you're approaching this, because you're not always going to make your athletes happy. They're not always going to agree. But if they respect what's happening, I think that's the biggest gut check that we're heading in the right direction.
When you said you're going to be critical and take shots, I thought you were this far away from saying, we're going to behave like men. I thought you were.
I say women can be critical and take shots.
Right.
So
it's the same, but I think they might be surprised. Give me the gender breakdown of who comes to your site.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Some context on this. We think a lot of the opportunity we have today as an organization goes back to Title IX. In Title IX, or in the 70s, Title IX was passed, and there's this huge influx in participation. So we had, more women than ever playing sports. It's almost 50-50 at the professional Olympic level, right? That has led to a huge increase in interest and attendance and viewership. And so we have this huge opportunity today to really capitalize on this whole new demographic. That new demographic is a lot of millennial women. It's a lot of women like myself that played sports at an amateur to elite level. But when we go one step further, we're seeing it's a lot of just sports fans. So our podcasts are hosted by professional female athletes, and those skew, that demographic is heavily women. But our website is just straight up sports news. It's actually predominantly men. And so I think, we are really learning who this audience is in women's sports. And I think what we're learning more than anything is that it's a new type of sports fans. And maybe they're not going to legacy media, they're not going to traditional sports sites, but they're out there and they're excited and they're ready to be monetized.
The most important part, they're ready to be monetized.
They're ready to be monetized.
But this wasn't some McKinseyan plan you put together. Tell them how you started it. I mean, this was just sort of labor of love, and it grew into something else.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, as was mentioned, I was an athlete. I played soccer in college, and I played professionally for a little bit in the US and abroad, and it was really that experience that led me to starting Just Women's Sports. I was seeing the space shift. I was seeing that, hey, attendance is up, viewership is up, all these little girls and boys are staying after games for autographs from people. I was just seeing all the momentum, and I had a bunch of injuries. I had to retire sooner than I admittedly would have liked. Came back to the Bay Area, was working in tech, and for me, I had a lot of friends that were still playing or coaches I was close to, and I wanted to follow along, and I just couldn't do it, and we now know it's 3-4% of sports coverage is dedicated to women's sports, so just this total lack of coverage. But then on the other side, because I was actively seeking this out, everything I was seeing was young, it was really feminine, it was lifestyle content, it wasn't the world that I knew, and I was just like, where are the sports? Where are the highlights and the stats and who's at the top of the table and the bottom of the table? Like, where are the sports? And that's the whole idea for Just Women's Sports. We're exactly what our name says. And we had very humble beginnings. We fully started as an Instagram account. The idea was House of Highlights, but Just Women's Sports. And we just sort of grew and layered and added more people. And I think it's been an exciting run.
We're talking also about investment in sports.
Yeah.
you want some investment in the NWSL. You have some very good owners, and you did listen to the Alexis Ohanian and Julie Ehrman panel. I'm just curious if people didn't see it. Like, please go and check it out. It was great. What was your takeaway? I mean, I think if I'm the commissioner and I hear owners who push that hard, I'm encouraged, but I'm also a little bit scared that getting some sort of consensus might be difficult. I made the analogy to some folks I was working with that they're the Mark Cuban. He doesn't care if he gets fined. He doesn't care. He's just going to push and push and push. Your biggest friend and your biggest foe. Maybe not, but how did you take it?
Well, I think consensus doesn't have to mean that everybody gets what they want. Consensus means that everybody, at least my definition, that everybody has an opportunity to be heard, and that the discussion starts with context. From my perspective, having spent literally my entire career working on behalf of sports leagues, both as outside counsel as well as in-house in a variety of leagues, the thing that was and continues to be the most important element of the conversation when you're dealing with an owner who is bullish on growth and innovation and really wanting to push the envelope is to help them and the ones who are a little bit more conservative and traditional to understand how each of their perspectives relate to the league's growth strategy, and really making sure that everybody understands the why. So if there were, hypothetically, a situation where we as a league were offsides with a particular team, in my experience, as long as they understand, that ownership group understands why it's important to the league, which they are a partial owner in, for the league to take a stand on a particular issue, in my experience, it's been the very rare exception that you can't find a way to consensus. And so I actually believe, as a believer in diversity, if you are a true believer in diversity, you have to embrace the fact that you have diverse opinions. Diverse opinions are the basis of how businesses get to better outcomes. I genuinely believe that, which means that you have to be the kind of person who's comfortable with respectful discourse and disagreement, and you're not looking for what I describe as bobbleheads. You're actually looking for debate about how people feel, what they want to do, and you'll probably end up not exactly in the middle, but depending on the issue, weaving your way through innovation, some more traditional conversations or decisions, and getting to a place that everybody can live with. And that, in my opinion, with those diverse perspectives, is how you chart your growth trajectory. So I actually welcome it. I genuinely do. I think that they bring a new and interesting approach. Certainly on a personal level, their perspective on purpose and profit is like it's my why. So I totally align with that and love the way that they're embracing it. And it's generating revenue. It actually grows the pot.
They have 14,000 plus season tickets. I think a bunch of your teams would say, sign me up.
The truth is, and again, I'll go back to my sample size of 2. I have 2 boys who are 14 and 11.
All right, hold on. Of my arc of interview, I'm just
my sample size of 2. I will tell you honestly, literally 2 weekends ago, he had learned in school, my 11-year-old, about the fair trade practices for chocolate. I'm not kidding.
What school does this 11-year-old go to?
Well, apparently Larchmont, New York is woke. It's very woke. He came home from school, went to our pantry, took every piece of chocolate in there that didn't have the fair trade certified logo, which he brought home the picture, threw it out, and brought me to find and he explained to me why. He explained to me that, child labor, they're taking advantage of children in third world countries, we cannot buy, and their dollars are spent, and obviously they're running the house, obviously, in my house. They will force their parents to spend money with companies that care about cause. It is ingrained into how they think about their wallet and their time.
All right, Haley, normally I'd go to you right now, but she's teed me up with something perfect. I have a little inside information.
Go for it.
And like if you're sitting out there with the whole fair trade chocolate for the 11-year-olds, you're like, what?
Yeah, go buy fair trade chocolate.
I believe it, but even more staggering, now you have to share, when you took the job, what did one of your focus
that was
group...
my other son.
Well, let's hear what the other one did.
My other amazing child. That was when I got offered the deputy commissioner role.
But it speaks to sports business.
It does. It does. And it speaks to, most importantly, what the next generation is paying attention to. The next generation is paying attention to diversity, equity, fairness, justice. They're unwilling, it's table stakes. They're unwilling to accept anything less. And when I was approached about being the deputy commissioner of the National Lacrosse League and was told I was going to be the first female deputy commissioner of a men's professional sports league, and I was worried about taking on that role at that time because of my personal life and my responsibilities at home, my 14-year-old said, you have to take that job because you're a pioneer. And boys and girls, but he said boys. He said boys and girls are looking up to you and you're gonna pave the way for the next generation of sports industry leaders. And like, how do you say no? Okay, I have to do it. So it's true. And so to your point about what is the next generation of consumers looking for, and this is why I'm so bullish on the NWSL, because boys and girls, and that's why your demo information is very validating to what working theories would be. Boys and girls believe that showing up for women and supporting women's sports and being interested in women's sports is what they need to do and want to do. They're an untapped audience.
I thought we were here. That's not what I was talking about. Wasn't there a story about stickers?
Oh, no, trading cards.
Trading cards,
Sorry.
stickers, that's where...
No, that...
This really amazed me. This part amazed... How old? Was this the
Of
14 or the 11?
my 11-year-old.
This is the 11...
This is true.
was the 11-year-old.
Actually,
11!
I haven't told this story before, but you'll love this story.
Haley, listen up. You'll love this story.
You'll love this
I'm
story,
listening.
actually.
And by the way, you're next.
I feel like my 11-year-old is going to get hired after this panel. He's too young, probably, but he can be an intern, maybe. When he found out I was taking this job at the NWSL before it was announced, he spent the weekend before calling on literally a call list, Target, Walmart, our local card shop, to ask them.
Kid, right?